Did you know some of Elvis Presley's greatest recordings almost never made it to fans' ears? Is it possible the king of rock and roll's legendary status could have been even more impressive without these technical nightmares? Number 5. Suspicious Minds, the infamous fade-out fiasco. Imagine being in the control room when one of Elvis's most iconic songs was nearly ruined. That's exactly what happened with Suspicious Minds. When Elvis recorded Suspicious Minds in January 1969 at American Sound Studio in Memphis, the session itself went brilliantly. Producer Chips Moman helped Elvis deliver one of his most passionate vocal performances ever. The backing musicians, known as the Memphis Boys, created the perfect foundation with tight drums, soaring strings, and soulful backing vocals. Everyone in the studio knew they'd captured something special. But then came the technical disaster that nearly sabotaged everything. When RCA producer Felton Jarvis got his hands on the master tape, he made a decision that infuriated both Elvis and Moman. Around the 3:36 mark, Jarvis artificially faded the song out, then back in again. This fade manipulation wasn't done for artistic reasons, but because of industry, politics. Chips Moman was furious, recalls session guitarist Reggie Young. The fake fade-out was completely unnecessary and messed with the natural energy of the recording. The fade-out issue stemmed from a publishing dispute. Jarvis reportedly added the fade-out to extend the song's length and thus receive more publishing royalties. It was a technical manipulation done purely for business reasons. Despite this technical tampering, Suspicious Minds became Elvis's 18th and final #1 hit in the United States. Fans and critics alike wonder how much more powerful the song might have been without this jarring audio manipulation. The original, unaltered studio recording without the fade-out reportedly exists in RCA's archives, though few have heard it. Elvis himself was reportedly displeased with the fade manipulation. He had experienced a career resurgence with his '68 comeback special and wanted his music presented authentically. This technical issue created unnecessary tension during what should have been a triumphant period in his career. Interestingly, when Elvis performed Suspicious Minds Live, including his famous Las Vegas residencies, he never incorporated any fade-out gimmick, suggesting he preferred the song in its pure, uninterrupted form. Bootleg recordings from the original sessions reportedly showcased the song without the fade manipulation, revealing the recording as originally intended. Would Suspicious Minds have become an even bigger hit without this technical tampering? We'll never know for sure. But the song succeeded despite this audio engineering misstep, not because of it. Number 4. A Little Less Conversation, the Buried Stereo Mix. Have you ever heard a song that sounded like it was recorded in a bathroom? Elvis's original, A Little Less Conversation, suffered from similar audio issues that kept it from reaching its full potential for decades. When Elvis recorded this up-tempo number for the film Live a Little, Love a Little in March 1968, it was a minor success at best. The song peaked at a disappointing £69 on the Billboard charts, and then largely disappeared from public consciousness. But the recording's problems weren't Elvis's fault. The original release suffered from significant technical limitations. Recorded at Western Resorters in Hollywood, the session was captured on multi-track equipment, but the released version was collapsed to mono, losing much of the recording's depth and dynamic range. The guitars, drums, and horns that gave the song its distinctive energy were all crammed into a single audio channel, creating a flat, lifeless sound by today's standards. The technology just wasn't being used to its full potential, explains sound engineer Jim Reeves, no relation to the country singer. They had multi-track capabilities, but weren't mixing for stereo in a way that would showcase the song's energy. Even more frustrating, RCA had actually created a true stereo mix of a little less conversation, but this version remained buried in the vaults for decades. This technically superior stereo version helped separate the instruments and vocals, giving the recording room to breathe and prodding the intricate horn arrangements and rhythm section work that got muddied in the mono mix. The technical limitations of the original release might explain why the song initially flopped. It wasn't until 2002, when Dutch DJ Junkie the 40th remixed the track, using elements from the superior stereo recording, that people truly heard what a little less conversation was meant to sound like. The remixed version became a global pound one hit, 35 years after its original recording. Former RCA executives have acknowledged that many Elvis recordings from this era suffered from hasty production schedules and technical compromises. The film soundtrack recording sessions were often rushed, with minimal time spent on mixing and mastering. Elvis would typically record his vocals in just a few takes, then move on to the next song, leaving technical decisions to engineers who may not have had the time or resources to optimize each track. The song's resurrection decades later proves sometimes technical issues can bury great performances. Original session musicians have expressed surprise at how vibrant and contemporary the song sounded once properly mixed and mastered. Drummer Hal Blaine, who played on the original session, noted, "We knew it was a great groove when we cut it, but the released version just didn't have the punch we felt in the studio." Would Elvis's career in the late 1960s have taken a different trajectory if technical issues hadn't buried some of his most inimitous recordings? It's a question that continues to fascinate Elvis, historians, and audio engineers alike. Number 3. Heartbreak Hotel, the echo chamber experiment gone wrong? What happens when you try to create a specific sound, but push the technology too far? Elvis's first major hit almost drowned in its own echo. When Elvis entered RCA's Nashville studio on January 10, 1956 to record what would become his breakthrough hit, he had a specific sound in mind. He wanted to capture the eerie, echo-filled loneliness described in the lyrics. This creative vision led to one of the most famous and technically problematic recording decisions in early rock history. To achieve this echo effect, RCA engineer Bob Ferris took an unusual approach. He connected the studio to the building's bathroom, using it as a makeshift echo chamber. A speaker was set up in the bathroom playing the studio feed, while a microphone captured the natural reverberation feeding it back into the mix. They were essentially inventing techniques on the fly, explains music historian Sam Thompson. Using a bathroom as an echo chamber sounds primitive now, but it was actually quite innovative for 1956. The problem: the technique was pushed too far. The resulting recording was drenched in so much echo that it nearly obscured Elvis's voice and the instrumentation. RCA executives were initially horrified by the muddy sound. The excessive echo made parts of the recording sound distant and unclear, especially on the limited playback equipment of the era. Bass player Bill Black's performance was particularly affected. The low frequencies became so boomy and undefined that many listeners couldn't distinguish what he was playing. The echo also caused timing issues, as the delayed sound created a slight lag that made the rhythm section sound less tight than it actually was. Sam Phillips, who had produced Elvis's earlier Sun Records sessions, reportedly called the recording technically flawed, but emotionally perfect. The excessive echo actually aligned perfectly with the song's themes of loneliness and isolation, creating a happy accident where technical problems enhanced the artistic impact. Guitarist Scotty Moore later revealed that they spent nearly 4 hours just getting the echo levels adjusted, far longer than the actual performance took to record. We knew something was off with the sound, but nobody wanted to say anything because Elvis seemed pleased with the eerie quality, Moore recalled in a 1987 interview. The technical issues didn't prevent Heartbreak Hotel from reaching #1 on the Billboard charts and selling over 1 million copies. In fact, the song's unusual sonic landscape helped it stand out from other recordings of the era. The technical mistake became part of the song's appeal. Later, reissues and remasters have attempted to clean up the muddiness of the original recording with varying degrees of success. Modern engineers have tried to preserve the atmospheric echo while bringing clarity to Elvis's vocals and the backing instruments. However, purists argue that the technical flaws are an essential part of the recording's character and historical significance. This recording demonstrates how technical issues can sometimes become defining characteristics of iconic songs, blurring the line between technical problems and artistic choices. Would Heartbreak Hotel have become the same cultural touchstone with a cleaner, more conventional recording approach? The answer remains one of rock and roll's great what-ifs. Number 2. Burning Love. The buried vocals controversy. Can a massive hit still suffer from serious technical problems? Burning Love proves it's possible, even for Elvis. When Elvis recorded Burning Love in March 1972, it was destined to become his last major hit during his lifetime. The song reached #2 on the Billboard Hot 100 and decoded a more contemporary rock sound than many of his early 1970s releases. But behind this success lies a technical controversy that continues to divide fans and audio engineers. The technical issues began during the basic tracking session at RCA's Hollywood studio. Elvis recorded his vocal track with the full band playing, rather than overdubbing his vocals later, as was becoming standard practice. This created significant bleed between tracks, meaning Elvis's voice was picked up by the instrument microphones, and vice versa. You can hear the drums bleeding into Elvis's vocal mic throughout the recording notes. Audio engineer Mark Wilder, who has worked on remastering Elvis's catalog. This created phase issues that couldn't be fixed with the technology available then. But an even bigger technical problem occurred during the mixing stage. Producer Felton Jarvis, perhaps attempting to follow contemporary production trends, pushed Elvis's vocals too far back in the mix. Compared to earlier Elvis hits where his voice dominated everything else, Burning Love featured his vocals competing with the guitars, drums, and particularly the female backing singers. Original session guitarist Dennis Linde later claimed this wasn't an accident, but a deliberate choice to mask vocal imperfections. Elvis was struggling a bit that day, especially with the higher notes. Linde reportedly told music journalist Peter Guralnick. Burying his voice a bit in the mix was a way to cover that up. Elvis himself allegedly disliked the final mix. According to several Memphis Mafia members, he complained that he couldn't hear himself when the record was first played for him. This might explain why he performed the song less frequently in concert than might be expected for such a major hit. The vocal balance issues become even more apparent when comparing different masters of the song. The original single mix differs noticeably from versions that appeared on later compilations. Some CD reissues attempted to address the problem by bringing Elvis's voice forward, but this often resulted in increased background noise and phase problems. In 2015, Sony RCA engineers discovered previously unused alternate takes of Burning Love while preparing the Elvis at Stax collection. These alternate versions reportedly feature clearer vocals and different mixing approaches. However, they remain unreleased except to serious collectors. Despite these technical compromises, Burning Love became Elvis's biggest hit of the 1970s. This raises an interesting question. Did the more contemporary production approach, flawed as it may have been, actually help the song reach a newer, younger audience? Some music historians suggest the muddier, more rock-oriented mix actually helped Elvis seem more relevant to early 1970s listeners accustomed to denser rock productions. The controversy surrounding Burning Love highlights the tension between technical perfection and commercial appeal. In attempting to make Elvis sound contemporary, the production team may have created technical issues, but still delivered a massive hit. Number 1. That's All Right. The accidental birth of rock and roll. What if the most important recording in rock and roll history was essentially a technical accident? Elvis's first professional recording reveals how technical mistakes sometimes make music history. When Elvis stepped into Sun Records studio on July 5, 1954, no one expected to create a revolutionary recording. Least of all Sam Phillips, who was primarily hoping to find something commercially viable. The session had been largely unproductive, with Elvis attempting ballads that failed to impress Phillips. During a break, Elvis began fooling around with Arthur Crudup's That's All Right, playing it at a dramatically faster tempo and with a distinctly different feel than the original blues recording. Scotty Moore and Bill Black joined in, creating an impromptu arrangement that caught Phillips' attention. What makes this a technical issue story is how unprepared the studio was for capturing this spontaneous moment. Sun Records was a primitive setup by today's standards, a single room with minimal acoustic treatment and basic recording equipment. Phillips had positioned microphones for a ballad session, not the energetic performance that suddenly erupted. The microphone placement was all wrong for what they started playing, explains recording historian Colin Escott. Elvis was too close to the vocal mic for such an energetic delivery, and the instruments weren't properly isolated. The technical limitations of Sun's recording setup become immediately apparent when listening to That's All Right. Elvis's vocal clips or distorts at several points where he gets too loud for the microphone or preamp to handle cleanly. The slap-back echo effect, while imitated, was inconsistent throughout the recording due to the manual tape delay system Phillips used. Perhaps most notably, Black's bass is almost inaudible in parts of the recording. The primitive single-track recording system couldn't adequately capture both the low frequencies of the bass and the higher frequencies of Elvis's voice and Moore's guitar. Phillips made a technical compromise, favoring the vocals and guitar. "We only had one shot to get it right," Phillips later recalled. No separate tracks, no punch-ins, no fixes, What you hear is exactly what happened in that room. The technical constraints actually contributed to the recording's raw energy. With no ability to fix mistakes or blend multiple takes, the performers had to capture a complete performance with total commitment. The resulting recording pulses with an urgency that more technically perfect recordings often lack. Sun Record's limited equipment also shaped the sound in unexpected ways. The tiny studio space created natural compression as sound bounced off walls, while the tube equipment added warmth and slight distortion that is proven impossible to perfectly retoge with modern technology. Elvis historians note that Phillips made a crucial technical decision that shaped rock history. He left in the mistakes. Rather than demanding perfect takes free of vocal clips and timing variations, he recognized the emotional authenticity in the performance outweighed technical considerations. When That's All Right was released, many listeners were confused by its sound quality. It didn't have the polished production of major label releases from the period. Yet this technical crudeness helped establish the recording's authenticity and contributed to the rawness that made early rock and roll so revolutionary. Later attempts to improve the recording through modern remastering have often failed to capture the energy of the original. By cleaning up the technical imperfections, these remasters sometimes lose the very characteristics that made the recordings special. The legendary That's All Right session proves that technical limitations and even outright problems can sometimes result in musical breakthroughs. Would rock and roll have sounded different if Elvis's first recording had been made in a state-of-the-art facility with perfect technical control? We can only wonder. Could these technical challenges actually have been blessings in disguise for Elvis's career? What would these iconic recordings sound like if modern technology had been available when Elvis first stepped into the studio?